It's not just any pro wrestling personality that gets the full-on museum treatment, but that's what is happening for the one and only Miss Elizabeth in the new exhibit that opened in her hometown of Frankfort, Kentucky. It's called The Lovely Miss Elizabeth. I made the trip over to Kentucky, and I'm going to give you a sneak peek inside the lovely Miss Elizabeth, the new exhibit in her hometown of Frankfort, Kentucky. My name's Adam Harris, ring announcer, wrestling fan, and collector here in the mountain state of West Virginia. Congratulations to everybody at the Capital City Museum in Frankfort because the Miss Elizabeth exhibit is fantastic. It covers so much ground in a relatively small space. The museum itself is huge. It's 2 stories, a ton of Frankfort history and Kentucky history, but they've really taken ownership of one of their most famous daughters of Frankfort, Miss Elizabeth. Elizabeth Hewlett, as she was known when she was growing up in Franklin County. And as I walked into the room, I have to tell you what took my attention because as soon as I walked up the stairs, I could see the dresses or gowns, the ring-worn gowns that they had on display. But as soon as I entered the room, my eyes went up to the top because there was the Miss Elizabeth beach towel. And it's not just because she's in the bikini on the beach towel. I've just never seen one in person. They pop up on eBay every once in a while, and so that was an immediate thing like, wow, there's the beach towel. And immediately my eyes went down to that 2 pack of Liz and Macho, which is something I just got earlier this year. It's been on my list of items, my must-have Grail items that I wanted. I think it's called the Power and Beauty or something like that, the 2 pack, and it's in its own case right there on the wall. Really cool to see that. And then immediately you turn to the right are the leather jackets and one sequined jacket from Miss Elizabeth's career. But then I turned to meet around immediately and started at the front of the room. There were some of her magazine covers. There was an explanation about her life and about also a digital timeline. And I'll put a link down in the comments because that's out there on the website for you to enjoy. A ton of photos, a ton of instances in her life, way more in the digital timeline than they could ever fit into the room. But you get to see her as a majorette in her high school yearbook. Her senior portrait is in there, and then on exhibit they have her letterman's jacket from being a majorette in the band. She's also a flute player, and she was a part of the Mat Maids team. They followed the wrestling team around, and also I think she was a cheerleader for the baseball team. She's also an award-winning horseback rider. A ton about the early life of Miss Elizabeth. She was born in 1960, and unfortunately, she died in 2003. So there you have far too young to have left this world. I often wonder what Miss Elizabeth would have done in her post-wrestling career. Would she be doing podcasts right now? Maybe she'd be hosting a podcast, or maybe she'd be an interviewer of herself. One of the things that you get to see there is the beginnings of ICW and also some images of her first on-screen appearances, which I think they say is 1985. What a career. And I'm going to tell you a few of the things that I took away from this, a few things I learned. There is an immaculate piece of jewelry on display there. I really don't know if I want to put the photos in here because it should be seen to believe that they have this immaculate necklace that Elizabeth wore at WrestleMania 3, and it looks amazing. It's fantastic. They've got the images of her doing the interviews before WrestleMania 3, that is. And in the exhibit that shows the necklace, there is a handwritten letter, or at least a copy of a handwritten letter that she wrote to a woman named Sue, who I guess did a lot of her fashion, a lot of her gowns. And in this letter, she writes to her about a big event coming up in the summer and how she's looking for just the right dress, something sexy and classy. And it's really fascinating to see her handwriting and the way she communicated that. But I think she was talking about the first SummerSlam. As we know, the Mega Powers took on the Mega Bucks, and Elizabeth famously revealed the bottom half of her dress in the finish of that match, distracting the Mega Bucks so that Randy and Hulk could get the win. And I can't help but think that if the time lined up, that is what she was writing to her friend Sue about. That was pretty fantastic. There's this cool, glitzy mirror ball, disco ball type display that says the lovely Miss Elizabeth, and there's a cutout of Miss Elizabeth from, I think, the 1992 WWF photo cover. shoot, so you can pose with that. There's a neat like paper doll that's done with magnets, and so you've got various versions of Miss Elizabeth that you can replace her wardrobe and her gear on. That's a fun thing for the kids. And the two dresses were pretty incredible because they had color matched them to photos and a couple of matches that I was not familiar with, including one, and this is one of the takeaways I found out. I did not know that Macho Man wrestled after he lost the retirement match at WrestleMania. There's a 91 World Tour, I think is what it was called. And he has a match against the model Rick Martel. And I think the peach dress is the one that Liz wore in that instance. But I guess Macho Man gave a speech when he said, before the match, that said he had to fulfill his contractual obligations. And so that's why he was there to wrestle the model Rick Martel. Pretty fascinating. Some cool trading cards on display, and I'll go ahead and shout out my new Instagram friend, Jeremiah Smith Rouse, who donated a ton, or at least loaned out a ton of his personal collection to this Miss Elizabeth exhibit. And you'll see his name throughout the entire thing. A ton of the cards, a lot of the wrestling figures that are on display all come from Jeremiah. So shout out to him for donating a ton of stuff. And he's communicated with me to say he's going to rotate some things out over the course because this exhibit is going to be up for 2 years. And so hopefully there'll be some new stuff coming in. All the more reason to go back and visit again. And so shout out to Jeremiah. I look forward to seeing what he's able to cycle in and out of the exhibit in the coming years. We went up for one of the drive-in movie nights, which they show on one of these posters that I'll show you. They clear out the parking lot and they do show some highlights in the parking lot with some food vendors. There were supposed to be coffee and hot dogs there. Unfortunately, of most of these have been rained out. Kentucky's had an insane weather season, and so have we here in West Virginia. So just thoughts to all the people who've been affected by flooding and severe weather this year. My goodness. But they moved the movie night indoors, and that was a neat setup anyway. They've even put some blankets on the floor, and it was a great time. I wore my Miss Elizabeth shirt, not this one. I picked this one up at the exhibit. But I wore my Miss Elizabeth homage shirt, and I was glad I did because everywhere we went, people said, "Oh, Miss Elizabeth, do you know about the exhibit?" I'm like, "Yeah, we traveled 3 hours just to be here for it." But as soon as we walked up to the museum, it was a little early. They were getting set up, hoping they could do the movie night outside, and I met Ellie, who is one of the organizers at the Capital City Museum. Ellie, she's actually a PhD, Dr. Eleanor Haskin Wagner, Museum and Historic Sites Supervisor. And it was great to talk to Ellie. She was excited that a wrestling fan had come to see it. She said she loved talking to the wrestling fans, and it's generated a ton of excitement. And she gave me permission to shoot some photos and videos of this. And so I just really wanted to congratulate Ellie and the entire team, Jeremiah, and everybody at the museum for really owning this. It would be easy to say, oh, she died under suspect circumstances, or the way she died was undesirable. I don't think that's fair to the legacy of Miss Elizabeth, and maybe that's why I don't think Miss Elizabeth is in the WWE Hall of Fame, and maybe that's why. I hope things like this exhibit might actually change that. Maybe we could get Miss Elizabeth into the Hall of Fame. And so, congratulations to the Capital City Museum. It was really great to visit. I can't wait to go back. And according to them, on August the 1st, the drive-in movie night is also going to include some live professional wrestling. And so, I don't know if I'll be able to make it back that weekend, but on August 1st, if you need a reason to go, if you need an excuse, and you're anywhere in vicinity of Franklin, Kentucky, for us, it's about 40 minutes west of Lexington, Kentucky. And on our way home, I took a stop by Toy Headquarters. So that's what my next video is going to be. I'll show you the 3 items that I picked up at one of the greatest, if not the greatest, toy stores in the entire country, Toy Headquarters. And so I mentioned we stopped by the gift shop. So this is where this t-shirt comes by. There's another one as well. Very cool. Excellent t-shirt. Also picked up sticker from the exhibit. Very neat. And I showed you the drive-in poster already, and I got a poster that's similar to the t-shirt design as well. The lovely Miss Elizabeth. It's open for 2 years, 2-year exhibit. And so again, I hope you'll check out the Capital City Museum. I'll put a link in the description here and also a link to that timeline. It's so in-depth. And you got to go check out Miss Franklin County 1978. Miss Elizabeth, Elizabeth Hewlett. Did also take the opportunity. Right off of Main Street is the Franklin Cemetery. That's where Daniel Boone is buried. That American babyface pioneer who was probably a heel to the ancestors of Chief Jay Strongbow. Pretty elaborate grave for Daniel Boone in the Frankfort Cemetery, but very modest gravestone for Miss Elizabeth. She's buried beside her mother, and thanks to the staff there, they were able to help me locate the grave because there's literally thousands of grave sites along there. And we were able to find Miss Elizabeth's grave. I talked to the gentleman in the office of the gravesite, of the cemetery, that is, and he ran me off a piece of paper, internment information. It says internment card. He copied the internment card for me. There you see Miss Elizabeth Ann, 42 years old. What a tragedy. But he said there's been plenty of people stopping in to check out the gravesite. And then, of course, the gentleman from the cemetery told me that he played baseball with Liz's big brother. So that's cool to hear. The town, I feel like they've done a great job spreading the word about the exhibit because everywhere I went, people noticed my t-shirt and said, "Do you know about the exhibit?" And even in one of the bookstores, I was showing one of the workers at the bookstore a book. It was about wrestling in Louisville. Actually, it was the Tuesday Night at the Gardens book. And I was not wearing my Liz shirt that day, but she said, "Do you know about the exhibit that's at the museum?" And so again, shout out to the Capital City Museum. They've been getting the word out in a great way, and I'm want to help spread the word to wrestling fans, especially those of you who are a fan of the First Lady of Wrestling, the epitome of beauty, Miss Elizabeth, the great, the lovely Miss Elizabeth. So that's your tour. That's your sneak peek of the lovely Miss Elizabeth exhibit. I want to thank you for stopping by. Thanks for checking out my other videos, and I hope to see you next time. Come see us at the matches.